The night was quiet in the small town, too quiet for Daniel's restless mind. He had always been a man who felt out of place, as if the world he lived in wasn't the one meant for him. For months he had been drawn to the forest outside the city, to a particular hill where strange lights flickered in the sky whenever he was near. Most dismissed it as tricks of the eye, but Daniel knew better. Something waited for him there, something that felt alive. On this night, his instincts finally pulled him past his hesitation. He walked through the trees, following that unseen call until he found himself standing before a glowing arch of light floating above the ground. The portal shimmered with colors that shifted like liquid fire, humming with energy that made the hair on his arms rise. Daniel froze. He knew without understanding why that it wasn't here for anyone else. It was here for him. The portal had chosen. For a long moment, he stood at its edge, heart pounding, caught between fear and curiosity. The air smelled of ozone, sharp and electric, and every breath he took filled him with the sense that his life was about to change forever. He reached out with one hand, half expecting it to burn him, but instead the portal rippled like water. His fingers disappeared into it, then his wrist, then his arm, until he could feel the pull on his entire body. He could step back and pretend it wasn't real, but deep inside, Daniel knew he would never forgive himself for running from this. Gathering courage, he whispered into the silence, "All right then. Let's see where this goes." And with one deep breath, he stepped fully through. The world he entered was nothing like Earth. His vision blurred, his stomach churned, and when the dizziness faded, he stood on soil that glowed faintly under a pale lavender sky. Towers rose in the distance, crafted from stone and crystal, humming with a strange inner light. Plants shimmered with silver leaves, and creatures with wings of light darted across the sky. The air itself felt richer, almost alive. Daniel staggered forward, awe spreading across his face. This wasn't just another place, it was another world entirely. His body tingled as if the portal had changed him in ways he couldn't yet understand. He wondered if he could ever go back, or if he even wanted to. But then he heard footsteps. Not human ones. They were lighter, sharper, carrying weight yet grace. He turned and froze. A figure was watching him from a nearby ridge. She was tall, her skin faintly glowing under the strange light, her eyes shimmering like twin sapphires. Her hair, long and silver, flowed behind her like liquid light. She wore armor of strange design, elegant yet strong, as if carved from the same crystal towers in the distance. A crown rested on her brow, delicate yet unmistakable in its authority. Even before she spoke, Daniel felt the truth in his gut. She was royalty. Her voice carried through the air like music. "You stepped through the portal." Her tone was calm, but her eyes held fire. "Do you know what that means, human?" Daniel's throat went dry. He wanted to speak, to ask who she was, but no words came. The princess, he could see that she was one, in every gesture and look, took a step closer. "The portal does not make mistakes. It chooses. It has chosen you." Her words hung heavy, like a judgment. Daniel finally found his voice. "Chosen for what?" Her lips curved, not into a smile, but something between challenge and claim. "Chosen for me." The silence that followed struck harder than thunder. He blinked, certain he had misheard, but the unwavering way she looked at him told him otherwise. His heart raced, torn between disbelief and something else, a strange pull that seemed to echo in his chest. He had come here by accident, or so he thought, but in her world accidents did not exist. He was here for a reason, and she was part of it. But Daniel had no idea what it would cost him. The lavender sky deepened as Daniel stood frozen, staring at the woman before him. Her words still echoed inside his skull, sharp and heavy. "Chosen for me." The sentence didn't feel like a declaration, it felt like a destiny being written in stone. Daniel had never believed in fate. He had never believed in anything beyond what his own hands could touch. And yet, standing in this alien world under her piercing gaze, he felt as though every step he had taken in life had been leading him here. The princess moved closer. Her silver armor glimmered faintly, reflecting the strange lights of the sky. Her eyes never left him, unblinking, unreadable, carrying an authority that pressed against his very soul. Daniel felt small, a trespasser in a realm far beyond him. But beneath her regal presence, there was something else, something like urgency. She wasn't simply announcing his role, she was staking a claim. "You are human," she said softly, though her words were laced with steel. "And yet the portal called you. Do you understand how impossible that is?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "I don't even understand what this place is. I didn't ask for any of this. I was just—" His words faltered. He had been walking through the forest, following a feeling he couldn't explain. He realized how ridiculous that sounded now. "I was just drawn here." Her eyes narrowed, as if weighing his soul through his words. "The portal does not draw the unworthy. You may think you stumbled here by chance, but there is no chance. The portal is ancient. It is sacred. It chooses only once in 1,000 cycles. And it chose you." The weight of her gaze was crushing, but Daniel forced himself to breathe. His instincts told him to run, but his body remained rooted. "Why me?" he whispered. At that, her expression shifted ever so slightly. For the first time, Daniel saw a flicker of something behind her mask of control. Fear. She looked toward the horizon, where the crystal towers glowed faintly against the strange sky. When she spoke again, her voice was lower, more personal. "Because a storm is coming. And I cannot face it alone." Daniel frowned. "A storm?" Her eyes snapped back to him. "Not of rain. Not of wind. A storm of fire, of war, of death. My kingdom is on the edge of collapse. Enemies gather at our borders, and betrayals eat at us from within. The portal chooses when the bloodline cannot stand alone. It chooses a partner." Her words struck him like lightning. A partner. She was serious. This wasn't metaphor or poetry. The portal had chosen him to stand beside her. Daniel tried to laugh, but the sound came out broken. "I'm nobody. I don't have powers. I don't even know what I'm doing here. How could I possibly help you?" The princess closed the final steps between them until she was only a breath away. He could see the faint glow of her skin, the delicate line of the crown upon her brow, the strange, otherworldly beauty that both unsettled and mesmerized him. "The portal saw something in you. Something even you do not yet see. I don't need a soldier, Daniel. I need the one destiny has bound to me. The one who can stand beside me when the world burns." Her words sank into him like a knife wrapped in silk. He wanted to deny it, to walk away, to reject the weight of her claim. But deep inside, the strange pull in his chest answered her. As much as he wanted to fight it, he couldn't shake the sense that some invisible thread had tied him to this moment long before he arrived. Before Daniel could speak again, a sudden noise broke the silence. A sharp hiss cut through the air, followed by a crack like splitting stone. The princess spun instantly, drawing a slender blade from her side. It shimmered with a dangerous light, humming as though alive. Daniel followed her gaze and saw shadows moving along the ridge. Figures, tall, armored, and cloaked, emerged from the rocks, their weapons gleaming with a dark, unnatural glow. Their faces were hidden beneath masks of bone and iron. The princess's voice hardened. "They've followed me." Daniel's heart pounded. "Who are they?" "Hunters," she said grimly. "Assassins sent to end me before the storm even begins." She glanced at him, her expression sharp. "And now that you've crossed the portal, they'll come for you too." Daniel stumbled back, panic rising. "I don't even know how to fight." Her blade hummed as she lifted it, her eyes blazing with fire. "Then stay close to me. The portal did not bring you here to die." The assassins moved quickly, circling them, weapons raised. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to run, but the portal behind him had vanished. There was no way back. His only chance lay in the glowing woman who had claimed him, this princess who wielded her blade like she was born with it in her hand. The first assassin lunged. Steel clashed, sparks flew, and the sound of battle filled the air. Daniel stumbled, nearly falling, but the princess moved with breathtaking speed, her blade a streak of light that cut through the shadows. Every movement was precise, calculated, deadly. She fought like a queen defending her crown, and yet for every enemy she struck down, more emerged from the darkness. Daniel's chest burned, that strange pull inside him growing stronger with each heartbeat. He didn't know why, but the closer the assassins came, the more his body seemed to tingle with energy. He had no weapon, no training, no reason to believe he could survive this, but as one assassin lunged at him with a blade raised high, Daniel's hand shot up instinctively. Light exploded from his palm. The assassin was hurled backward, crashing into the rocks with a scream. Daniel froze, staring at his own hand in shock. The princess's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, but she didn't falter. Her voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Now you see why the portal chose you." Daniel's heart thundered. He didn't understand what he had just done, but one thing was certain: this world had already begun changing him. And the princess had been right. He wasn't here by chance. He had been chosen. The palace felt less like a place of safety and more like a cage, and Daniel could not ignore the way the walls seemed to close around him with every passing day. The princess treated him with a strange mix of reverence and possession, as if the portal had not only brought him into her world, but had bound him to her in ways he could not yet understand. Every word she spoke carried weight, every look carried an expectation, and Daniel felt himself drifting into a role he had never asked for. Servants bowed when he passed, and guards whispered about him as though he were a weapon or a prophecy. And yet, beneath the admiration and mystery, one truth burned in his heart: he wanted to go home. He had not asked for the portal. He had not asked for her. But each time he tried to bring up the idea of leaving, the princess's eyes hardened, as though he had betrayed something sacred. "You are chosen," she told him one evening as they walked in the moonlit garden, her voice soft but edged with steel. "The portal never errs. It never makes mistakes. If it brought you here, it means you belong here, by my side." Her words rang in his ears long after she left him alone, and Daniel felt a weight pressing down on his chest. He had stepped through a doorway, yes, but had it led to freedom, or a prison disguised as paradise? The more he thought about it, the more he realized the princess wasn't just keeping him close because of desire. She was afraid of something, and whatever it was, it made her cling to him with an intensity that felt almost dangerous. The palace's great halls echoed with secrets, and Daniel learned to listen. At night, when the torches burned low, he would wander the corridors, careful to stay hidden in the shadows. It was during one of these midnight walks that he overheard the guards whispering near the grand gates. They spoke of enemies gathering beyond the mountains, of an ancient war returning, of a prophecy tied to the portal itself. "The one who comes through the light," one soldier murmured, his voice heavy with dread, "will be the key. Either salvation or destruction." Daniel froze, his heart pounding. Was this why the princess refused to let him leave? Was he a prisoner, or was he the only thing standing between her world and ruin? The thought shook him, and for the first time, fear twisted with anger inside him. The next day, Daniel confronted her, though his voice trembled with frustration. "What do you know about the prophecy?" he demanded. Her expression darkened instantly, and the garden seemed to grow colder around them. "That is not for you to worry about," she said sharply, but Daniel saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. It told him everything. She wasn't holding him here out of love, she was holding him here because she believed he was necessary. She believed the portal had delivered him as the answer to a war her people were too afraid to face. And worse, Daniel realized, she might be right. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He stood at the balcony, staring out over the alien city with its glowing towers and rivers of light, feeling more trapped than ever. Somewhere out there, beyond the portal, his own world still existed. His family, his life, everything that had once defined him, it was all still waiting. But here, in this strange land, he was no longer just Daniel. He was something else. Something more. And the princess had no intention of letting him go. As the alien sky darkened with the shimmer of approaching warships in the distance, Daniel knew the truth with chilling clarity. He had stepped through the portal, but it was not a path that could be undone. The princess, the prophecy, the war, everything was bound together, and he was trapped at the center of it. And yet, deep inside him, another feeling stirred. Not just fear, not just anger, but the first spark of something dangerous. A realization. If the portal had chosen him, then maybe, just maybe, it had given him the power to choose what happened next. The days grew heavier as the shadow of war began to stretch across the kingdom. Daniel felt it in the air, in the silence that fell whenever the guards reported back to the princess, in the way the counselors spoke in hushed voices when they thought he wasn't listening. The city itself seemed to brace for something unseen. Markets grew quieter, the laughter of children was replaced by anxious whispers, and even the glowing towers dimmed earlier each night, as if the world itself wanted to hide. Daniel, trapped within the palace walls, could only watch as tension wrapped itself around everything like a tightening rope. And all the while, the princess kept him close, her hand always reaching for his, her gaze always heavy with meaning he didn't want to acknowledge. Yet despite his growing anger at being a prisoner, Daniel could not deny the pull between them. There were moments, quiet, fleeting moments, when her walls would drop. Late at night, when the moon poured silver light across the marble floors, she would speak to him not as a ruler, not as someone who believed in prophecy, but simply as a woman afraid of losing everything. In those moments her voice trembled, and Daniel saw a vulnerability that was real, raw, and dangerous for him to feel. He had promised himself he would resist, that his heart belonged to the home he had left behind. But her eyes, sharp as fire and soft as sorrow, unsettled that promise each time she looked at him. Still, beneath the fragile bond they were forming, the truth kept gnawing at him. He was not free, and the war pressing down on this kingdom was not his. One evening, as the council gathered in the throne hall, Daniel was permitted to listen in. What he heard chilled him to the bone. An empire beyond the mountains, vast and merciless, had already begun moving its armies toward the borders. Their warships had been sighted above the outer provinces, their banners carried on the wind of conquest. The counselors begged the princess to prepare for battle, but she stood her ground with cold defiance. "The portal has delivered him," she declared, pointing toward Daniel where he stood among the shadows. "He is our answer. He is our shield." The words echoed in his chest like a curse. He wasn't a warrior, he wasn't a general. He was just a man who had stumbled through a doorway. Yet here, in this alien palace, his very existence was being woven into their destiny. Daniel clenched his fists, rage and fear swirling together. They were using him, building their hope on his shoulders, and yet not one of them could explain how. Prophecy was their answer to everything, and he was the unfortunate center of it. And the princess, she was the worst of them all. Not because she hated him, but because she believed in him too much. That night, as the city below flickered with distant flames from the first border raids, Daniel confronted her again. His voice was sharp, breaking the silence of her chambers. "You say I am chosen, but you won't tell me how. You hold me here like I'm your possession, but what if I don't want this? What if I want to go home?" For the first time, the princess did not snap or glare. Instead, tears welled in her eyes and she whispered, "If you leave, my people will die. And I will lose you." The words stabbed deep into him, leaving him torn between fury and pity. She wasn't just clinging to him because of prophecy. She wanted him for herself, as though the portal had not only brought a savior but had given her something, someone, she was terrified to let go of. And in that moment, Daniel understood something he had tried to ignore since the first night he arrived. He was no longer only fighting for his freedom. He was being pulled into a war he did not understand, a prophecy he could not escape, and a bond with a woman who refused to let him go. Beyond the palace, the sky burned red with the light of enemy warships. The first battle was coming, and Daniel knew he had only two choices: run and abandon this world to its fate, or stay and discover whether the portal had chosen him for something greater than he ever imagined. The night the war truly began, the sky itself seemed to shatter. Daniel had never seen anything like it. Columns of fire splitting the clouds, thunder that wasn't thunder but the roar of war engines descending from the heavens. The city's towers shook as if the earth itself recoiled from the invasion. From the balcony of the palace, Daniel could see the horizon burning, whole districts swallowed by firelight as the enemy's first wave descended like locusts. Panic swept through the streets. Mothers pulled children into dark alleys, soldiers scrambled to assemble defenses, and the once glorious city trembled under the shadow of annihilation. Daniel felt his chest tighten with terror. This wasn't just a war, it was an extinction coming for them. The princess stood beside him, her jaw firm, her eyes locked on the burning skyline. She didn't flinch when the ground rumbled or when the glow of explosions lit her pale face. Instead, she placed her hand on Daniel's arm and whispered, "Do you see now? Do you understand why I cannot let you go?" Her words carried both desperation and command. Daniel wanted to tear his arm free, to shout that this wasn't his fight, that he never asked for this. But the sight below froze the protest in his throat. Thousands of lives were being crushed under a storm they could never withstand. He felt the weight of her words pressing down like iron chains. If he walked away now, he wouldn't just be freeing himself, he would be dooming them. As the first enemy warships pierced the city's defenses, the palace erupted into chaos. Soldiers rushed through the halls, carrying weapons Daniel had never seen, weapons glowing with strange blue fire. The council shouted orders and prayers alike, their voices breaking with fear. And through the madness, Daniel was dragged toward the throne room, where a circle of cloaked priests waited. Their eyes glowed with eerie light, their hands marked with runes that pulsed like veins of molten stone. "The chosen must be bound to the prophecy," one of them declared, pointing to Daniel. "Only then will the shield awaken." The words stabbed through him like ice. Bound. Shield. He wasn't a man to them. He was a weapon. Daniel fought as they reached for him, his voice cracking with rage. "I'm not your savior. I'm not your shield." He shoved one aside, his fists clumsy but fueled by desperation. Guards tried to pin him, but the princess raised her hand, halting them. Her eyes locked with his, sharp and burning. "Daniel, if you don't stand with us, everything will fall. I will fall." Her voice trembled on the last words, not as a ruler, but as a woman standing on the edge of despair. For a moment, silence drowned out the screams outside. His heart pounded, torn between fury and pity, freedom and duty. He had no army, no knowledge of this war, no reason to be here. And yet, looking into her eyes, he felt the walls of choice closing in. The priests began their chant again, the words old and heavy, filling the throne hall like a storm. Power stirred in the air. Daniel could feel it, prickling across his skin, making the hairs on his arms rise. Something inside him trembled, something he didn't recognize, something waiting to break free. Then the sound of the palace gates, shattering, thundered through the halls. The enemy had breached the heart of the city. The first wave of soldiers, armored in black steel that drank the firelight, stormed into the outer corridors. Their war cries shook the walls. Daniel's pulse raced as the princess drew a blade unlike any he had ever seen. Curved silver, glowing with a faint, furious light. She stood ready to fight, her silk gown torn at the edges, her crown forgotten. "With or without prophecy," she said, her voice sharp as steel, "I will not let them take you." And for the first time since he had fallen through the portal, Daniel felt something shift inside him. Not belief in destiny. Not acceptance of prophecy. But a burning refusal to watch her fall alone. The war had come crashing into his cage, and now Daniel had to decide. Not tomorrow, not later, but now. Would he stand, or would he run? The palace descended into madness. The walls trembled as explosions rocked the city, each blast closer than the last. Dust rained from the carved ceilings, and the air reeked of smoke and burning stone. Through the broken gates, enemy soldiers surged like a tide of shadows, their armor glinting black, their eyes burning with unnatural light. The defenders fought desperately, blades clashing, arrows flying, yet the enemy pressed forward without hesitation, without fear. The palace, the symbol of their kingdom's pride, was crumbling from within. Daniel stood frozen for an instant, his breath ragged as the chaos unfolded. The priests had fallen back, their chance breaking, but not before one last word of prophecy spilled into the air like a curse. It clung to him, wrapping around his chest, whispering that he could not run, not now. He wanted to deny it, to tear the word from his soul, yet his body betrayed him. His fists clenched, his heartbeat thundered, his legs refused to retreat. He was trapped not just by stone walls, but by the choice clawing at his insides. The enemy burst into the throne room. Their blades were jagged and cruel, forged for slaughter, not honor. They moved like predators, quick and merciless, cutting through guards as if they were paper. The princess fought at the front line, her glowing silver blade cutting arcs of light through the dark. She struck with fury, her gown streaked with blood, her face fierce and unyielding. Daniel could hardly believe the sight. She was not a fragile ruler, but a warrior drenched in firelight, holding back death with her own strength. "Daniel!" she shouted, slashing down an enemy soldier. "Do not just stand there, fight!" The words ignited something in him. Rage, fear, desperation. He couldn't tell what it was, only that his chest burned with it. He grabbed a fallen guard's spear, the weapon heavy and cold in his hands. When the next enemy lunged, Daniel thrust clumsily, the spear shaking, but it found flesh. The soldier collapsed, the black armor cracking. The moment seared into Daniel's mind. He could fight. He could bleed them. But the tide did not slow. The enemy kept coming, endless, merciless. Daniel fought again, each strike harder, each breath shorter. He moved on instinct, his muscles burning, his vision narrowing until there was nothing but the clash of steel, the screams of the dying, the fire consuming the air. Every strike of his spear felt heavier, faster, as if something beyond his own strength guided his arm. The priests stared from the shadows, their eyes wide with recognition. "It awakens," one whispered. "The prophecy stirs." Daniel didn't hear them. All he knew was survival. All he knew was the princess's voice calling commands, her blade flashing beside him. Together, they carved a line through the attackers, their movements clashing, breaking, yet holding. Blood slicked the floor. Bodies piled at their feet. And still, the enemy advanced. Then the throne room doors cracked open wider, and from the smoke emerged something larger, darker, more terrible than the rest. A commander. His armor gleamed like obsidian, carved with runes that pulsed red. His eyes glowed like fire pits. In his hand he carried a war axe so massive it seemed forged from the bones of mountains. The air itself grew heavy as he stepped forward. The enemy soldiers fell silent behind him, parting to let him through. The princess's face hardened, her knuckles white on her sword hilt. "This one is mine," she whispered. But the commander's gaze fixed not on her, on Daniel. The giant raised his axe, pointed it across the room, and spoke a word in a tongue Daniel could not understand. Yet the meaning pierced him like a spear. Chosen. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Somehow, the enemy knew too. They hadn't come for the throne. They hadn't come for the city. They had come for him. The priests dropped to their knees, screaming incantations as if trying to hold the threads of fate together. The princess raised her sword, stepping in front of Daniel, though her body shook with the weight of the moment. And Daniel, breathless, bloodied, trembling, stood between flight and fire, his mind screaming to run, yet his chest burning with something deeper. Something rising. The commander roared, the sound shaking the very stones. Then he charged, his massive axe swinging down in a blaze of crimson light. And in that instant, Daniel felt the world split. The choice was no longer tomorrow. It was now.